Merry Meet Annie here. I have a long list of video topics viewers have been suggesting to me recently, and I thank you so much for that. Well, I've taken to doing the daily vlogs. If you follow them, you know about that on my channel. I have no intention of not being part of the topic discussions that we have here on YouTube. And I've always looked forward to suggestions that come from viewers for that. When I see a few on the same topic, I tend to jump on that one first. It's why I did the one on Unitarian Universalism recently. I have recently been asked by several what one needs to believe about death and afterlife to be a Wiccan. And the questions have come phrased just about like that. What does one need to believe? I'd be lying if I said that in my earliest experiences there wasn't an assumption of what we believed. There were constant discussions in our witch salons regarding reincarnation and the Summerland of Tir na Nog, however we viewed it. And there was an assumption that if we were in circle, that we felt the same about reincarnation and its purpose, and that we felt there was a place we went in between lives before returning for our next living experience in the physical world. That's the way it looked in writing. That's the way it looked in the way our teachers declared what is to us. In reality, I have never met two who profess they are Wiccan, and I'm talking about even those traditionalists, no less the beautiful eclecticism that is part of the description, the definition of that word nowadays. I have never met two of us who believe the same thing. On this topic, perhaps especially so, I have met others who identify as I do, and who I relate to deeply and personally, who have not committed to a sense of surety around understanding how reincarnation works, if it does, what happens to us when we pass away physically. I've not even seen a consensus amongst us of what we think happens next, or when we come back. If we come back, why do we come back? Death and the afterlife seem to be touched on briefly in a lot of the things we read in neo-pagan books. But have you noticed that when it's touched on, it seems to be just about the same line or two, book to book? I think there has been a greater sense in the a little close to 40 years that I've been part of our community that we think for ourselves. We explore for ourselves. We determine for ourselves some things which feel definite for us and some things which don't get to that point of solidity for us. Personally, I'd probably say that my view of the afterlife and what comes next is, won't it be wonderful upon my passing to find out what it is that when I find I'm nearing, if I have the privilege to know I'm nearing the end of my life, I'm going to be like a kid, curious about what comes next. Do I hope that there's something beyond this one experience in the here and now? Yeah, I kind of hope that. I don't know that I myself think of some progression of reincarnation that is a continual expansion of experience and wisdom gathering that ends up being enlightenment. I have a feeling that well, in the end that seemed a bit simplistic to me, and it seemed to me, therefore it might be the reality I'm creating for myself now and in the afterlife, that I've come from something that I return to each time. And when I departed again, me, the parts of me that seem like they are my essence here, have been so scattered in that return. They go out in different bits and pieces. Oh, if I had to describe it, I might think of it as some kind of a group soul that I return to and mix and mingle with all the parts of existence that I'm part of, and I'm reassembled from all those bits and pieces, and I go back out again. My own feeling has been that what we learn in our living, no matter how many times we do it, is about us, but it's also about an expansion of that Godhead. The source becoming ever evolved through the experience of all of its bits becoming physical and being reunited with it at the end of that time. What I feel, what's happened to me in dreams, and in times of exploring the ethereal, moments I've touched on mystery when it comes to this particular area, hasn't felt to me like a litany of reincarnation for the purpose of ever-evolving wisdom to the point at which we realize we are indeed divine and therefore we become one with the divine. That's the litany that I was taught. In deeper conversations, as years went by, I realized even those who initiated me in my first circles had their own views of what that might mean. Certainly, every one of my coven mates had a very different view of what that might mean. So what does that mean for someone who's exploring the religion of Wicca, looking for an answer to what is death and what comes next? Well, it gives you the opportunity to think, why is it important to you that you know? How does knowing what comes next make a difference? How you choose to live now. What your life means here and now. A lot of us come from religions that there's a reward or a punishment according to how we live this life. And so what happens at the end of our lives is good or bad as a result of our lives. But what if we don't know what happens for sure at the end of our life? Or if we, as an entity, as a one-off individual entity, continue on or reassembled in a new package? What if we don't know any of those things? Because we really aren't promised a specific ending in our chosen faiths. Or what if we lived a life where it was about living that life fully, learning all of life's lessons, the painful ones as well as the blissfully enjoyable ones, literally gathering in all the bits of our life we possibly can, experiencing it fully and not wasting the moments of our life? What if we chose to live that way? And then upon the moment of our death, we see what comes of that next. Instead of having what comes next be some carrot dangled that encourages us to live any particular way. I hope when I come to the end of it all, that some sense of who I am continues in some way. I hope that those I have lost have continued in some way. I know I felt their presence in a way that was more than my own feelings of love and grief, my own memories. I've touched on the mystery that something exists beyond here and now. But what, if you're looking at Wicca as a religion, what of that religion encourages you to live your life completely, regardless of what happens next? Consideration of what happens next is also a wonderful opportunity to consider what your sense of the greater divine, the Godhead, the unity, the one, whatever you choose to identify it with, the source of all creation and return. Thinking of death allows you to consider what that might mean to you. Because it's not just about your birth into the physical world, it's about the constant rebirthing of all that exists, and you're part of that. That we know. No one's going to hand you, on this path, a pamphlet describing what to do in life and what your rewards will be and what will happen next. It doesn't work that way. If we live our life here, aligned to the gods we choose to align ourselves to, especially if it's in the name of love, and they are expressions of pure divine love. It's all about the here and now and the experience of physical living. And it's about finding out for sure what happens next when it's that time. Some of us find a lot of comfort in no one providing us the answer. Others find it unnerving that those who teach us or guide us can't give us an answer in this regard. We feel it especially when we lose a loved one and wonder where they are. What's next for them? My experience on my path has been that, like all religions, one of the questions that mine exists in order to answer is what happens when we die. We're not excluded from those considerations. But the answer to that question for me has been the reward for our living this time around is the value we imbue our life with, the purpose we give to our time here, what we do to make best use of every minute of our living. I might think I know what comes next. It feels like in times in my life I've touched on it for a moment. It feels like there's been moments when I just, all of a sudden I knew for sure, and then it's gone and I forget. It might not be that way for others on the same path. But for me, death has remained a promise. A promise of some form of transformation and evolution. A re-embrace by the love from which everything comes. A chance to be present to that. To live within memory. In union with all that ever is, no less what was, but all that continues to be. And then in some way, be birthed from that into a new opportunity in the physical world. If you're looking for an answer, you won't want to find one from this witch when it comes to what happens when we die. Where do we go next? I have found great freedom in not knowing, in not living up to an expectation of a what's next, but to live this opportunity, this precious opportunity I have been given, to the max, to the absolute living maximum of what I can be here and now. At the end of my life, whether it's once and done, like some would say it is, whether I continue as Annie, only in a new shape and form, or whether I rejoin my soul family, and mix and mingle with them, and I take parts of not just myself but them and come out as distinct and different. No matter what happens, what matters is the choices I've made in the life I'm living now. That I know, that I can put my arms around. That's the place I can experience fully my failures and my successes and my joys and my sorrows. If I'm not learning from the moments I am here, I am unprepared either for a complete termination of me as an entity at the end, or my progression. What I can make an offering of when I leave this life to something greater than just me, or to my greater self. I might be evolving and becoming more with each experience I have of living. Ask all of your friends what they're thinking about death and the afterlife. If for no reason, to understand that if anyone is telling you this is the way it is, not the way it is for them, but the way it is, whatever the promise of their life and living is, that they're so sure about, it will encourage you to explore lots of different things for yourself. It will also lead you to understand that there's not a declaration of what comes next that is a uniform one, even within those of us who use the same labels to describe ourselves. Experience the freedom of exploring that. Also, I encourage you to explore the freedom of not needing to know that. Death is a wonder and a mystery. I think, personally, it's also the opportunity to become one with the stars again and to be reborn in some way. If not, this existence, especially when I've chosen to live it with awareness and fully and intentionally, is still an amazing, magical gift.